Welcome to my August wrap-up. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I'm doing my August wrap-up. I know it's already mid-September, but bear with me. This month has been a little bit mentally draining, a little bit crazy here and there, and I kind of felt a little bit drained from pushing out so much content that I just wanted to sit down and talk about some of the books from the month of August and have a really relaxed video. So for the month of August, I did pretty well. I read around 61 books in August, and most of them were full-length novels. We're in mid-September right now, and I'm already hitting around the 30-book mark, but I must say that the month of September has me reading a lot of novellas. August was definitely the full-length novel month, and then I definitely took a break in September. So if you guys are new to my channel, you guys are probably not familiar with how I do my wrap-ups. I actually don't talk about every single book that I have read because I read a lot of books and I'm going to be here forever. So I pick and select books that I want to put more emphasis on and books that I want to promote more or books that I want to discuss more because they had given me a more visceral reaction to it, whether I liked it or whether I didn't like it. And I try not to talk too much about the books that I've already talked about in my previous recommendation videos that I have posted throughout the month. So here are the books that I think will be worth your time to hear about. So the first book that I want to talk about is actually a new novel from Sophie Jordan. It's part of her new series called the Duke Hunt series. And now this book follows our main hero, who is a duke. You know, he's been living that entitled status for his whole entire life until somebody reveals to him that he was actually born a bastard and he was born out of wedlock. The parents weren't married fast enough before his birth, so he loses all his dukedom titles, his rights, and his money, and basically he's screwed unless he marries someone rich. So he uses his handsome appearance and he tries to persuade all these ladies to, you know, have them fall in love with him so that he can have back all the money that he once had, and then he can return back to the lifestyle that he loves so much. But of course, our heroine hears about this and sees him being very flirtatious with girls that she considers her friends, and she puts a stop to it and she always tries to get in his way. Now, for this one, I didn't really like this one a lot. So for me and Sophie Jordan, I feel like when I do like her books, I really do like her books. And when I don't like her books, I really don't. Often at times it is a miss for me. I feel like that the chemistry and the tension and the romance is always there, but the plot lines sometimes just fall off the wagon for me a bit. And this one unfortunately did the same. I felt that our characters were very juvenile. The chemistry was just lacking, and I didn't really feel the heat and the passion, and nor did I really care about our two characters and whether or not they ended up together. So this one, unfortunately, I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I want to talk about is actually a duology from an author known as Teresa Medeiros, and now I've read one book from Teresa before, and this one is called Breath of Magic. I've talked a lot about this book, mostly because I really enjoyed it, but I decided to go back and revisit some of Teresa's historical romances because I'm always intrigued by other authors' works in different genres. Now, this one is part of the Kincaid Highlands series. So it follows our heroine who is from the Highlands, and she wants to go back to restore her clan's honor, and she asks the help of her cousin's ex-boyfriend, basically. So this book is really hot and really spicy. So if you're looking for a historical romance that really starts off with some really hot and intense scenes, definitely go check this one out. I was definitely taken aback by how hot and steamy and how fast it was in the very beginning. But anyways, our hero doesn't really have much to do after kind of going to the war, and he comes back kind of missionless, aimless in life, and he sees the girl that used to be kind of a very tomboyish character that he's known since her childhood days, and he sees that she has grown up to be a very beautiful woman. So he goes on about, you know, helping her on this mission so that she can travel the Highlands in hopes to seek and find her long-lost brother. And then this is the romance where they fall in love. Now, for me, I feel like this one and the next one that I'm about to talk about in the next book in the series in the duology is not for everyone. I felt like that this one I was very, very iffy about for the first like at least 75% of the book. I was unsure of the plot. I was unsure of the characters. I didn't know whether I liked the characters together or not. I didn't know whether I liked the characters at all. So it was really hard for me to really get motivated to continue reading this novel. However, towards the end, I did want to mention that the romance, the fluffiness, the chemistry between our characters were just so like literal, and you just felt it on every page. So that's why this one I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Now the next book in the duology series is called Some Like It Wild, and this follows our heroine, who is a very prim and proper girl. She is been trained to be as a very noble lady, and she has a younger sister that she desperately wants to protect when they go on this like grand journey from across from one town to the next town. But what happens is that our hero actually sabotages her road trip and tries to basically rob her. And it's really funny in the very beginning. There's a lot of action and adventure involving this heist, and our characters are definitely enemies to lovers. They have a special spark and chemistry right from the beginning, and there are a lot of things to figure out from our dark and mysterious hero, who is also the brother of our heroine in book number 1. So it's like a sibling duology, and our heroine in this book has to kind of learn to really break the rules, to let go of her type A personality, and to have fun a little bit with our hero, who is clearly like a free man. He's a type B personality. He's just there to have fun, and he doesn't really care about what the rules are because he's just going to break them anyways. This one, once again, is one of those books that I mentioned before where I'm not sure if I should recommend you to read it, because it is a kind of an iffy novel. In the very beginning, I was unsure of whether or not I would like it, especially since our hero seems kind of loosey-goosey. He seemed like he was kind of a class clown character, which is someone that I'm not really too fond of, but he quickly won me over, and this one I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars for the same reasons as book number 1. You know, towards the end, you get some really fluffy, sweet scenes that I just can't forget. Now, the next book that I want to talk about is actually one from Lisa Kleypas. This one is from a very, very long time ago. This one was published in the year that I was born, which was 1995, and this one's called Midnight Angel. Now, this one was a very wild trip. Lots of things were happening in this book that made me go, what and why? I feel like Lisa Kleypas has definitely learned how to craft her skill and to write a better story and to have a sensible plot line with some characters that actually make sense. And this is one of her earlier works that you can just tell that it was either very popular back then to have plot lines like this, or it was just kind of her figuring out her craft. But anyways, this one follows our heroine, who is a very beautiful woman, and she is known to probably have some magical powers. And because back then she has this like opinion of her, this rumor of her that she has these magical powers, she has to be sent to the gallows. So then what happens is that she runs away, she flees, and she redesigns herself into a different person so that she can serve as a maid in our hero's like estate and manor, and then that's where they kind of fall in love. Now, our hero is a very dark and mysterious character. There is something wrong with him like in his past, but basically what happens is that he is very depressed that he lost his wife, and he thinks that, you know, love isn't for him anymore. He's never gonna fall in love ever again. But as soon as he meets our heroine, something flips a switch inside his head, and he immediately falls for a heroine, and there's a lot of insta-love involved. Of course, there's like a lot of mystery involved too as well, but all this falling in love mumbo jumbo stuff happened in the first 50%, and you're kind of left wondering what would actually happen in the next 50% of the book. So a lot of crazy things do happen, and I can't even list them all, but this one, unfortunately, I really didn't like, and I ended up giving it only a 3 out of 5 stars, but was definitely leaning closer to a 2.5 stars. Now, this one is actually book number 1 in a duology series, and the next book is called Prince of Dreams. Now, Prince of Dreams by Lisa Kleypas has a really low rating on Goodreads. I heard there was a lot of crazy, fantastical, paranormal, you know, witchy ghost dream stuff happening that's wild, and I'm kind of holding it off for now because I want to read it with some of my friends just so that we can all have a good laugh with each other. So the next book that I want to talk about is actually a novella. This one is 92 pages long. This one's called Royally Bad by Lisa Vanno. And now I talked about this in my rural romance recommendation video, and I really enjoyed this, so I thought that I'll plug it back here again. But basically this follows our hero, who is a black sheep character. Think of Prince Harry. Basically our hero is known to be a partier, and he goes out, he has fun with the ladies, and he does not care about his image at all, but duty calls and he must now refine himself and become the proper rural member that he was always supposed to be. Our heroine is a PR specialist, and she's hired to kind of rein him in and make him a good boy. And what happens is that they fall in love, and there's a lot of quiet and sweet moments shared between them where she starts to realize that his bad boy image might just be an image overall, and that deep down the person inside of him is actually a really nice guy who cares a lot about the country, who cares a lot about his duties, and also cares about the people around his life. Now the next book that I want to talk about is actually a paranormal romance novel that I was very excited to read. Now I wanted to do a witchy romance video vlog thing, and I'm probably going to still do it anyways. It's just going to take some time, but I did manage to read a witchy romance novel that is set to be released in September this month. So I'm pretty happy that I got an arc done on my list. But this one's called the X Hex by Erin Sterling. And this one involves our heroine, who is actually a witch, and she accidentally cursed her ex. Her ex kind of walked out of her life and she got really depressed, so she sat in a tub, got really drunk, and then her roommate, who is also a witch, basically this whole town is full of witches, her roommate actually decides to do like a seance, and then they cursed him, and then he has like been cursed, so anytime he comes back into the small town that they grew up in, he would almost die because there's so many threats on his head. And our heroine realizes that it's been a mistake because he's come back into the small town, and she doesn't necessarily want to see him dead. So they both go on this adventure to try to cure this hex. Now this one, I felt like it was just not enough like romance. Now if you read this book, you're gonna see that they both do desperately care about each other. You know, there's definitely lust going on, but this one lacked a lot for me because there wasn't that much of a development of their backstory. It's a second chance romance, and we learn about their romance that's taken place a couple years ago, but we definitely don't feel it when we're reading it because there's just so little detail given about their backstories. So this one unfortunately left something to be desired for myself, and also a lot of the paranormal adventures that were happening, the mystery behind what actually is happening in the small town is a little bit too much for me, and it wasn't that interesting, especially with the lack of romance. So I had to only give this one a 3 out of 5 stars. Now the next book that I did read was one from Tegan Hunter. Tegan Hunter is an author that I discovered last year that I really enjoyed. I loved her pizza series and I wanted to read more books from her. This one is part of her Roommate Romp series. This one's book number 2, and I read book number 1 a couple months ago. It was definitely very cliche. It was something that was been done before. It was very predictable. It was just boring, so I gave that one a 3 out of 5 stars. Now, Love Thy Neighbor is book number 2, and it's a friends to lovers romance, and this one involves our characters who have been friends for a very long time, and obviously they don't want to cross that line because they don't want to ruin their friendship, and so what happens is they live together. So a lot of things do cross the line because they see each other more, and they also have a lot of things that happen to them that they start to realize that they're very attracted to each other. Now, once again, I've read this story before. This is not new. Nothing was special about this one. So I ended up only giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. And I wasn't actually too sure if I would continue with the series, but I actually did read book number 3. Now, book number 3 is called Crave Thy Neighbor, and it follows our hero who really doesn't need to be in a relationship. He doesn't want to be in a relationship, but our heroine is unfortunately very attracted to him, and they have to be forced together to share a room together or a house together and be roommates with each other because of certain circumstances. And now she has to deal with him while also dealing with her kid. So our heroine is a single parent mom, and she really doesn't want to impose on our hero because our hero is kind of like the grumpy, starchy character who doesn't seem like that he does like kids, but he quickly loves our heroine's kid, and it starts to feel like that they're actually a family together, and it's super sweet and it's super cute. There's definitely some moments in there where our hero was very stubborn with his emotions and he wouldn't admit it to himself, and it left a quite bit of a mess, but eventually they got together and they eventually got over themselves. Unfortunately, this one just didn't have enough difference from other romance novels that I did read, and our hero actually did something in this book that peeved me a bit and that I didn't really like, so this one I only gave it a 3 out of 5 stars too as well. So the next book that I did read was Irresistible by Melanie Harlow, and this is part of her Coverley Farm series. This one follows our hero, who is a single dad to 3 daughters, I believe, and he is in over his head. He has a lot of things happening in his life, especially since he's a CFO of the Coverley Farms. So basically he has a lot of things happening and he needs to hire a nanny to take care of the girls because the girls are going through phases that he is not familiar with since he is a man. And what happens is that our heroine has actually been in love with him for a very, very long time. She's also younger, so he often puts her age in the forefront of his mind. He consistently always thinks about her as kind of like too young for him, and that it would be very wrong of him to make any advances on her, and she keeps reassuring him that she is an adult, she can make her own decisions, and that her feelings are true. So there's a lot of that kind of like age gap romance where the age gap becomes the problem for their relationship. And also, of course, there's that forbidden love aspect since it is a nanny and boss relationship too as well. Now, I really like this romance because it was definitely very easy to fly through. Our heroine is definitely someone that you can fall in love with because she's just so sweet and she's so considerate of others. She takes care of the girls and she is secretly pining for our hero. Meanwhile, our hero is that strong male type character who really cares about his girls and always tries to put his family first. Unfortunately, this one did have that aspect where it kind of dragged on a little bit too long and it became a little bit redundant, and it overall took some enjoyment factor for me, so I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I did read was actually book number 2 in the Coverley Farm series. This one's called Undeniable, and I thought that I would really like this one because it's the childhood friends to lovers aspect. It's that trope, but then childhood friends to lovers turns into friend enemies to lovers, because our two characters unfortunately had a fallout in their childhood years and then they ended up hating each other. Basically the storyline is that he would dare her to do something and she would dare him to do something, and they would both get themselves into a lot of trouble, which was really cute to read in the very beginning of the novel. However, they dare each other a little bit too far and then they get their feelings hurt and they never really see each other again until she really needs help with her business. So she actually has to partner up with our hero in order to save her business. And then afterwards, there's a lot of things that happen in this book that I really didn't like, especially our main female heroine. I thought that she was a very spoiled type of character. I thought she was a brat. She needed money. She needed to run her business and she needed to girl boss herself, but all she did was complain a lot and basically say that she didn't want to partner up with the one man that could actually save her business. But I mean, like, if you care about your business so much, you will put aside your feelings and you'll try to make it work, but clearly it was very hard for her. This one I actually gave it a 2 out of 5 stars, but I rounded it up to a 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Now the next book that I want to talk about is actually a romance novel that I didn't realize was a clean romance until I read the whole thing, and then I went, wait, this is a clean romance, and I kind of like, I think I saw the label for it on Amazon afterwards, but I really like Jane Austen retellings, especially if it's done well, and I've read one from Rachel John before that was retelling of Pride and Prejudice that I really enjoyed. So I went back and I actually bought all the books in her series, which is called an Austen-inspired romantic comedy series. The first book in the series is called Engaging Mr. Darcy, and I gave that one a 5 out of 5 stars, even though it was a clean romance. You know what, to be honest, like, I sometimes prefer romances with not that much steam in it, mostly because, like, I'm just not in the mood for it, or because I've read so much steamy novels that it just becomes a little bit too much for me if there's too much steam. So I read book number 2, which is Emma the Matchmaker. Emma has a best friend, you know, they've been best friends for so long, and then she starts to matchmake and she starts to push people together because she sees them as chances of one true love, and if they don't go together then she is going to be really sad. So she plays matchmaker. Meanwhile, her best friend, which is our hero, doesn't like it because she is consistently going into people's businesses and ruining their lives because she is not the best matchmaker, basically, and they fight a lot over it. This one I really enjoyed because it had that friends to lovers aspect, but then there had that angst and heartache when Emma realizes that she has done people dirty at some of the times, and then he is upset because he thought that he liked this girl, but then turns out she might be someone different. Obviously they like each other, but they're not willing to express their emotions to each other because they're scared of unrequited love. I enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Now the next book that I did read was called The Dating Dare by J.C. Lee, and this is book number 2 in her Sweet Mess series. Now the Sweet Mess series is kind of a hit and a miss for a lot of people. The first book, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. You know, it was fun, it was flirty, but it left something to be desired once again. Something was wrong with the plot that I didn't really like. Now, The Dating Dare is based on the plot line of them daring each other that the other person wouldn't fall in love with them if they went on several dates. And I just don't see that plot line being very plausible. So I didn't really enjoy it as much because I already entered into reading the novel with a plotline that I just didn't believe in. I mean, like in real life, if someone dared me to date them for 3 dates and then them trying to convince me that I wouldn't fall in love with them after 3 dates, I would literally be like, you're wasting my time. I don't even want to go on these 3 dates with you. But anyways, regardless, this is fiction. This is a romance novel. And basically our 2 characters meet up. They dare each other to go on these dates. These dates last for a long time throughout the book. And lots of sexy, fun, flirty things happen. But honestly, that's all I can really tell you. Halfway through the book, they were spending so much time together because of these certain circumstances that just kind of happened right off the flop. And I just felt like that these characters were just being pushed together in every scene. It felt a little bit stifling. So this one, unfortunately, I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I also didn't really see much character development in terms of anything. I didn't even know what our heroine was doing most of the part of the time as her career because it was mentioned once. Then I read a novel called So We Meet Again by Suzanne Park. This one follows our heroine who is actually an investment banker, and she unfortunately got laid off because the whole bank kind of went through a restructuring and she doesn't know what she wants to do with the rest of her life now because her whole job and her whole career and her whole life was built on this one job as a successful investment banker. She goes home to lick her wounds, and that's when she realizes and discovers YouTube, and she wants to cook on YouTube to show Korean dishes that are easy and healthy to make. And she is in the development of her YouTube channel, and she has to work with kind of her childhood friend to enemy person. Basically, she always had this enemy in her life. He's always more successful than her. You know, he has all these business adventures and he makes a lot of money, and his family praises him for his career and things like that. But then they learn to be friends with each other because he has a lot of good ideas to help her boost her channel and also to boost her business. So they actually become business partners. And then this is a story of her rediscovering herself, finding out something that she really wants to do, and building her own business and seeing the rise and fall of fame, and also dealing with family pressures and things like that. So anyways, this one felt like it was really rushed. I didn't like the writing style of this book. It was definitely more telling than showing, which is very frustrating and annoying because at some chapters, we're seeing her in development phases of her YouTube channel. Then all of a sudden she's already growing really quickly and really fast. And then she moves on to the next stage of her business to expand her market and to expand her brand. A lot of things also was solved very quickly in the end. But this one, I still gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Now, the next book that I want to talk about is actually an Audible exclusive romance novel. It's an audiobook. This one's called The Setup by Yevgeny Gothori, and I definitely butchered her name, so I'm sorry. But this one is a South Asian romance involving our doctor heroine and our lawyer hero. They're both very established people in their lives, and they're both very single. Their elderly grandparents really want them to be married and settle down because that's their wish. And our heroine is very stubborn because she's a doctor. She doesn't feel like she needs a man to complete her, and she just wants her family to lay off a bit on her single status. But what happens is that she goes on this date and she wants to not impress him because she doesn't want any more dates anymore. But in walks our hero, who is very handsome and he's very successful, and he might be someone that our heroine likes. But too bad, so sad, she is committed to her role of being a very bad date. And they actually ended up bickering back and forth on their first date until something happens at the restaurant and he sees her for her true self. And he realizes that she might be actually someone that he can spend the rest of his life with. And this is kind of like the romance where a failed first date turns into something more. I actually quite enjoyed this one. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. Now the next book that I want to talk about is called The Perfect Play by G.S. Carr. This one is also an Audible original. This one follows an older brother's best friend romance. Basically, our heroine wakes up one day, she's in Vegas, no recollection of what actually happened the prior day, and she realizes that she's in bed with her brother's best friend. And she also realizes that she is married and she doesn't know what to do. And to make matters a little bit more different, like a more of a surprise, is that our hero actually wants to stay married, and now she has to navigate this new relationship, especially since our hero is a very famous football player, and now she has to deal with like the fame, the paparazzi, and everybody kind of hounding her and giving, like, spreading all these rumors about her. I enjoyed this one too. I thought it was a very cute, fluffy, sweet novel that I gave it 3 out of 5 stars too. Then I listened to Son of a Beach by Mia Sosa, and this is also another Audible original novel. This one is an office enemies to lovers romance. It involves our two characters who have to be forced to go on vacation together for this like work trip, and their boss basically gives them an ultimatum that they have to get to know each other more and they have to work together more on this like one project that could really make or break the company. And unfortunately, this one I did not like. I felt that everything happened way too quickly, and also nothing happened at all. For example, they spent majority of the book hating each other, but then they start to get to know each other, become friends and lovers, and then it cuts off. And then you're like, wait, what? The book ended? So that's what I meant by it happened really quickly, but then it also didn't happen very quickly. But anyways, that is it for all the books that I read in the month of August. I want to remind everyone that if you guys want live updates of all the books I have read before, go check out my Goodreads. I literally update it as soon as I finish a novel, and then you guys can see what videos I have planned for next, or maybe just see what I'm reading next. I definitely have a lot more books that I haven't talked about that I read in the month of August, but I'm getting a little bit tired and I just don't want to talk anymore. But I'll see you guys again next time in a new video. Bye.